My name's Dave DeBow, founder of MoneyPartnerFormula.com, and this show is built for everyday real estate investors who are actively doing deals and looking to scale using other people's money. So if you're an active real estate investor and you want to get featured on this show to talk about your own real estate and capital raising experiences, then just go to daveinterviewsyou.com. Now let's get rolling with this episode, and remember to subscribe for daily interview content.
Hey gang, welcome back. Today we got a different kind of real estate investor, Neal Collier, and Neal invests in a very unique asset. It's not just multifamily, it is vintage multifamily, and Neal calls himself a vintage multifamily rehabber. So we're going to dive deep into this because Neal's zooming in from California. This is a gentleman that has worked at Disney. He's worked at Warner Studios. He knows all about the Hollywood lifestyle, and he's rehabbing some of these beautiful old properties. So Neal, welcome to the show. Great to have you.
Nice to be here.
So Neal, I kind of gave a little overview there, but maybe paint us a picture of what kind of properties you're working with, what vintage, what location, just kind of walk us through what does this actually look like?
Well, vintage can mean a lot of different things in Los Angeles where I'm based, but for me, it's anything built in the 1920s or earlier.
Wow.
Some people might look at vintage, anything built in the 70s or earlier, but, you know, architectural styles kind of deviated into more traditional architecture starting in the 40s and beyond. So the typical architecture you see throughout the country is probably more of the traditional style than it is in Ranch, whereas I focus more on Spanish style, Spanish colonial revival style apartment building.
I'm curious, like, and forgive my history, but like, was there even much in Hollywood before the 1920s? Like, dude, wasn't that like the golden era?
Well, I would say the 20s is probably the first decade where we saw substantial growth of single family and multifamily real estate in LA. Prior to that, it was more like Victorian style, bungalow style, more not just wood frame, but wood clad buildings. In the 20s, that's when stucco became the primary cladding of most buildings. So and the Spanish colonial revival was extremely popular. So in most cities in Los Angeles, you'll find a significant amount of Spanish colonial revival architecture. That's probably our dominant architectural style that most people associate with Los Angeles. Although these days, new construction's more leaning towards either 60s reference style post and beam or just traditional kind of modern farmhouse looks. You'll see a lot of that. But from when LA really became a pretty prominent city, it was all about Spanish colonial revival. So anywhere from the Valley, San Fernando Valley, all the way down to even San Diego, even up to Santa Barbara, you'll see this style everywhere. In California.
And there's still quite a bit left even from the 1920s. There's quite a bit of inventory.
Yeah, and there were builders where they took, I don't know where the plans came from because these were all handmade buildings. They were all, a very long period of time to build each one of these houses. They didn't come in kits or anything like that. So pretty much I don't know how many architects existed, but there must have been quite a few because it's amazing the diversity of styles. There are some typical styles, but even within styles that you see, a typical 3-bedroom, 2-bath house that might be anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 square feet, you'll always see even just slight variations. That's the beauty of this architecture. It's very malleable. It has a lot of options to add different kinds of ornamentation, courtyards, various, window treatments, picture windows, the smaller casement windows. So there's a variety of different finishes, and that's what makes the style great. And even bigger, mansions that were built in the style, we'll see that throughout Hollywood.
When you're talking about multifamily, so what does that mean?
Yeah, why do multifamily? But all I'm saying is that the reference of Spanish colonial revival extends into very large mansions all the way down to small single family and then larger multifamily. You can get this style in building centers. I've seen easily at least 16 unit buildings of this style.
So what's the average size of a building that you're typically working with?
Well, I won't invest in anything beyond 15 units because you have to have an on-site manager if you have 16 units or more in Los Angeles, and that there's legal liabilities that you face when you have on-site managers, because if you don't get along with them or whatever, lawsuits are pretty common for people like that, and I just didn't want to deal with that. So I do all my own management. I don't focus on.
Now, do you fix up and sell these, or do you hold on to?
No, I'm a buy and hold. I've sold one in the past, but generally we just buy and hold and, try to maximize the opportunity, the rental potential of these properties. And, worked really well because the quality of the tenant that we get, they're much more interested in kind of, they like the romance of these buildings, the vernacular of the architecture. And so we specialize in kind of restoring a lot of that old, what we call old charm into the units, which pretty much no one does. Very few people do that.
So you're kind of doing the opposite of modernizing. You're taking it back to its kind of more original state, but with.
Yeah, well, we modernize where it makes sense. Like, we'll fix foundations, we'll do the roof, we'll update the plumbing and electrical, et cetera, so that they're all modernized buildings. But from the veneer, the exterior, the interiors, all of that, we do our best to try to preserve or restore what the original character was. And sometimes, we enter projects where a lot of that original charm is completely gone. And so we have to do our best. So sometimes there's a little bit of a hybrid. Kitchens usually have to look a little bit modern, just because, we bring in sheet.
Don't want a wood burning stove in there anymore.
Yeah, we're not going to do that. But, we'll bring in, modern finishes. But at the end of the day, we try to, do everything else we can, light fixtures, moldings, doors, windows, hardwood floors, plaster work, everything, and then of course, a tile, the older kind of ceramic tile finishes for the bathrooms and showers and stuff like that, having the soaking tubs that are original, that are much nicer than the typical modern tubs. So we do everything we can. It's not always possible, depending on kind of what we inherit when we acquire a building. But, our goal is to try to kind of preserve as much as possible. And we have one building that's impeccably down, like every aspect of this rental property. It's a standard fourplex in LA, that's Spanish style. That looks amazing. And we added central air. We try to do that too. So that never exists in these buildings. So we bring in a lot of elements in unit laundry, all the appliances that you need. So we kind of modernize where it makes sense, but everything else is about the old charm. And so
maybe walk us through one of your favorite deals, if you don't mind, Neal, A to Z. When did you buy it? Give us just kind of an idea of what kind of condition.
Yeah. Well, how do you choose amongst your children?
Well, just pick one.
So one, we did in East LA. It's an area called City Terrace. It's a 5-unit building. It looks like a fourplex, but the way the building was constructed, it was on kind of a hill that kind of slopes in 2 different directions. So the way the builders compensated for that is they made one. The lower right unit, they split that into 2 1-bedrooms. The other 3 units are all 2 bedrooms. Typical fourplexes are either all 1s or all 2s.
Yep.
So this building we took over, the previous, and we don't know which owner in the past had done all the demolition, but they did some weird things, like every one of these units had stall showers, and they tore out some of the stall showers and in the bathroom. And then they converted the tub into a tub shower, and then they put laundry into where the shower was. And it was unnecessary because there was a way to add laundry without needing to demo a shower. So we had to go to tile yards that are, they specialize in kind of the old style looking ceramic tile. We found tile, particularly of this era, and we found the tiles that almost identically matched the same kind of pinkish purple tile that was in this bathroom. And we literally reconstructed the shower to match what was there. And we took a cue from another bathroom in another apartment in the same building that had that same facade, but the shower had been completely torn out and it was being used as storage. So I never understood that. So eventually we redid that shower, but we knew the exact dimensions. So we moved the laundry and then we put back the shower where it belonged. So, and then we redid all the hardwood floors. We found, antique, if the sconce lighting is gone, sometimes other owners might plaster over where the electrical was. So you have conduit where the wiring used to run. So we would find where that conduit was, where those connections were, and then we'll go out and source antique sconces of that era. So we don't necessarily know what exact sconces were there, but we'll find them of that period. So there's lots of resources locally where you can identify, where you can get, whole sets of sconces that match each other. And so we'll bring those in, and that adds a nice element. We put those on dimmers, so it kind of brings that romance back into the living room. Dining rooms and breakfast nooks will reintroduce some older chandelier lighting that's really attractive. So we did all of that. We created, we're good at working with space and figuring out where we can kind of borrow from some space in some rooms so we can add, laundry, for example. So we might move a closet from one place to another and then use that closet, usually like to face laundry off a hallway versus into a bedroom or kitchen. Mm-hmm. So we're good at that. And the way these buildings were built, they allow for that. There's options of being able to reconstruct spaces a little bit so that they're more sensible for what you're trying to achieve.
Hey there, if you're a capital raiser, a syndicator, or a fund manager, and you're looking for a steady flow of incoming accredited investor leads, then go ahead, grab a free copy of my new book, How to Get 20 Accredited Investor Meetings Every Month Without Cold Calling, Networking, or Chasing People. You can get that at 20accreditedinvestorsbook.com. Again, that's the number 20accreditedinvestorsbook.com.
Neal, if you don't mind sharing,
mm-hmm.
the business side of things, mm-hmm. I know LA is one of the most expensive cities in the world for mm-hmm. real estate.
Right.
So the business model, even if you're buying an old crappy building, you're still probably paying a pretty penny for that. And then you're doing renovations on it. So can you maybe compare and contrast, like how much it costs, what you put into it, rents before, rents after, that sort of thing?
Well, my strategy is pretty much different than, I would say, 99.999% of all investor strategies here. Most investors here are going to be much more aggressive on the buy side. They'll come in with all cash offers, short close, whatever. And with that, they'll, maybe they have the cash, maybe they don't. I don't have a lot of cash. I buy a building once every maybe 3 years, and mm-hmm. my wife and I have built this up from nothing 25 years ago. So we have taken full advantage of the interest rate environments, done tons of refis, took advantage when second mortgages were available on investment properties at much higher LTVs. Loan to value, for those that don't know what that means. And so these days, and pretty much our entire life, we have just focused on getting 100% leverage on every building we have on the buy side. So we don't bring in equity. We use the equity on other buildings. That's a second to fund the down payment, and then we get a first. And that has worked really well. So what I do is I look for deals that could cash flow from day one, that have positive cash flow after debt service, property taxes, maintenance, insurance, everything, based on the in-place rents. So they're
already cash flowing with it.
And to be honest with you, those deals exist once every 3 years. And
I was going to say,
that's why we buy those deals. We just closed on a deal in San Pedro, exact same situation. It was an 11-unit building, $1.9 million purchase, all debt financed. Even with the second being a bridge loan that's very high interest rate, we're going to cash flow $4,000 a month net to start. And there's probably a good $7,000-8,000 a month of upside on top of that. And once, as units vacate and things like that. What we are not are one of those types of owners that, pressure our tenants to move out, who are paying below market. And so that's the beauty of our model, is that we don't need to worry about that. I don't need to engage with tenants. I like to be on really good terms with them. If they choose to move, they move. If they choose to stay, that's fine, because I know that I'm not going to be worrying about, paying any of my bills. And that's really the key. And then, so what equity or not equity, but what capital we do have, we use that on the renovation side. So that's where it's a very simple ROI calculation. How much is it going to cost to renovate, and what's the incremental rent that we're going to get on the upside? And based on the annual rent that we're going to see, it's pretty, we look for at least a 15% cash on cash return based on our invested capital. And that will include everything from appliances, any system upgrades, cosmetic renovation, et cetera. So
are you typically kind of going in and fixing up the exterior of these properties first?
Yeah. So like, for example, if we're talking, say, we're redoing the studio and we have to spend like $40,000 all in, including all the plumbing, electrical, any new kitchen, new kitchen cabinets, flooring, appliances, blah, 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 say it's $40,000, but we're going to get like a $700 a month, bump. $8,400 a year. Divide that into the 40,000. You can do the math. It's a very high return, right? So, effectively, that's kind of what our model's based on. And then once we stabilize those units, then over time, the rents will just naturally rise. Sometimes rents will stay stable for a couple of years, but eventually there'll be another huge incremental increase as the economy improves. We also take advantage of refis, so that'll help our cash flow significantly. So right now we're in a market that I personally see where there's a lot of upside on the interest rate side. Everybody believes interest rates are going to drop, the year, but at the same time, we're definitely in a buyer's market right now. The rental market's softened significantly. I'm saying cap rates and GRMs that are, extremely attractive all throughout LA compared to what they used to be.
Well, the good news is you're not looking to sell anything anytime soon.
Exactly.
I know it. Right.
Yeah, we live on our income, and I like to do things right. We want to have happy tenants, people who are appreciative of all the work we do. I like get our compliments every time we show our place, because like everyone says, there's nothing like this out there, and I know that because I know the market. I know every market in LA. Grandmother was born in LA. My daughter's fourth generation, so I know all of Southern California like the back of my hand. I know every neighborhood, most streets. I know what things are going for in every one of these neighborhoods. So it's easier for me to value a deal. And I've created my own investment models, so I know how to value deals very quickly and determine whether it's worth my interest. Because we're good at seeing things very differently than a lot of other sellers. So for example,
you've got a specific niche. You've got a specific strategy. You've got a very long-term perspective. You're not looking to flip these things. And you want to take these old vintage properties and just kind of breathe life into them again and bring them back to that previous state of glory with a modern twist.
Yeah, our other deal in San Pedro that we closed on about 6 years ago was owned by a lawyer. He didn't know what he was doing. He basically just bought it as, I guess, a cash flow investment, but the place was shoddy. He had a few Section 8 tenants who were no longer there at the time, but, we didn't force them out. Unfortunately, one passed away, not in the unit, but elsewhere, and then the other, vacated on its own. But, we inherited the property with 3 vacant units other than those 2 Section 8 tenants, and I knew immediately where the upside was. And local realtors that sold us the deal, they were stunned at what kind of rents we got. Despite
they're probably stunned after they saw what you did to the property.
Yeah. We did some amazing things that really added a lot of value. But we also saw that this is a neighborhood that's undergoing tremendous positive change. For example, they are building this brand new, San Pedro's on the harbor area. So we're like a couple blocks from the harbor. So they're building this brand new mall That's going to be fantastic with a live music amphitheater connected to it. That's opening next year. We knew this 6 years ago.
Yeah.
So we had the vision like, look, we know this is coming. The building directly across the street from us is this beautiful old hotel that it turned into like a halfway home, but then somebody bought it and turned it into market rate housing and restored the building. So we knew about all these things, but the seller, didn't know how to rehab, didn't know how to add value, didn't
have time, didn't have interest.
So we try to look at a variety of different things while we're going into a neighborhood. There's so many variables that you have to consider, and it depends on your investment strategy. For us, we're buy and hold people. We like to, invest and hold and, generate the value add that we know we can and benefit from that. And then if we want to acquire, at least we have the equity that we can use on those deals to further, find other purchases. But the goal for us is never to sell. I never intend to sell any of these things. I think that's really good. I love what you're doing. I love how you're finding cash flowing deals in LA as is situation, then improving them. And you're very, very picky about which deals you do. So you're only doing one every 3 years. You might not be growing the portfolio as fast as you could, but you don't have any other cooks in the kitchen to deal with. Don't have any other investors to report to. And you're cash flowing and you're growing and you're able to fix them up as you go along too. Yeah, exactly. I have a lot of relationships with tons of commercial agents. This is literally 7 days a week for me. I'm always busy, always looking, no wonder you know every single neighborhood and every single street. We drive lots of neighborhoods. We talk to lots of agents. But we found that this is really kind of our specialty. We hone this strategy really well. And, but everybody's got their own niche. I'm not going to say that people who are aggressive,
but I haven't talked to too many people that are vintage multifamily rehabs.
Well, it's because, there's just ironically, like if you were to try to build these same buildings in this day and age and with the same construction methods that existed back then, it would cost you, it wouldn't even be, you couldn't do it. You couldn't do it profitably. It's hard enough building in LA, just given
even today it'd be tough.
All the, different requirements from building safety and God knows what other governmental regulation. Just to do modern style boxes. But when you're talking about, hand built, buildings with all of this character and design, it's amazing. You go into these buildings, you're just like, wow, how did they build these? They built them with lath and plaster, which is, a very time consuming construction. And they didn't have drywall. These things were not thrown up in 2 days. They were, God knows how many months, if not years, it took to build one of these houses. I don't know how they did it. And they didn't have the efficient equipment to bring this. It's remarkable. And then when you see the design elements, you just can't recreate this. You can't recreate the plaster. You can't recreate the style of the tile and all the finishes and just all of them. It's all these little design elements.
Well, and that's why you're attracting a certain kind of tenant and probably.
Yeah. And people, these are special and they're a dying breed. There's still plenty of investors that still don't understand what they have in these buildings. And they, when they remodel, they put in crappy Home Depot kitchens, they put in, lousy cabinetry, lousy tile. If you even have tile, they'll put in laminate flooring, which, they try to make you believe that it's hardwood, but it's
they probably laminate over the hardwood.
It's just horrible. It's just everything. And, they just do the cheesiest work. And so what we do is we do the complete opposite. So because of that, when people are looking on Zillow and they're looking for a place to rent, it's like, we're always going to stand out because
we don't have any competition.
They're just never going to find anything like that.
Somebody who that appeals to, they don't have much choice. So that makes sense. Neal, we got to wrap things up.
Yeah.
I'd like to connect with you and find out more about what you're up to. Where should they go?
Again, you can go to my LinkedIn page, Neal, Neal Collier, Collier. I'm happy to connect with anybody who's interested and go from there.
And that's the Neal Collier that's in Glendale, California. All right, Neal. Well, hey, hats off to you. Good job with that. And thanks for sharing your experience on the show.
Absolutely. Nice talking to you.
All right, everybody, take care. We'll see you on the next episode.
Hey there, I really hope you enjoyed that episode. And as always, if you want to listen to more daily interview content, make sure you subscribe. And if you're an active real estate investor and you're doing deals and you'd like to get featured on this show, then just head over to daveinterviewsyou.com.